My son canceled my 85th birthday for his wife's shopping. The words still echo in my mind, soft but sharp, like a cold wind slipping under a door. I remember standing in my living room, holding the phone to my ear, listening to him rush through his explanation as if he were canceling a dinner reservation. Not a moment I had quietly looked forward to for months. He said it so casually, like it didn't matter, like I didn't matter. I didn't argue. I didn't remind him of the years I had shown up for every milestone in his life. I didn't tell him how carefully I had prepared the small dinner, or how long it had been since I heard genuine excitement in his voice when speaking to me. I simply said, "All right," and hung up. Silence filled the room immediately, settling on my shoulders like a weight I'd carried before and knew how to bear. The house felt colder that night, though nothing in it had changed. The same lamp glowed in the corner. The same pictures sat on the shelf, him in his college graduation gown, his first apartment, his wedding day, smiling bright and proud. And yet, standing there, I felt like I didn't belong in any of those memories anymore. Like I had slipped quietly out of the frame without anyone noticing. I sat down in my armchair, letting the soft hum of the refrigerator fill the emptiness. I thought about how strange it was that life could turn so quickly, how the people you raise can drift far without ever realizing how far they've gone. I had spent years being the foundation beneath my son's life, supporting him, helping him, guiding him, quietly absorbing the pressures he never saw coming. But foundations are forgotten until they crack, or until they disappear. So that night, instead of grieving the birthday I wouldn't have, I made a decision. A quiet one. A peaceful one. One rooted not in anger, but in clarity. I packed a small bag, just enough for a few days. A jacket, a few shirts, my medications, my notebook. I walked slowly through the house, touching the edge of the dining table, the corner of the hallway wall, the frame of the old photograph of him as a little boy holding my hand. Memories stayed behind even as I prepared to leave. At midnight, when the neighborhood was silent and only the soft glow from the streetlights brushed the windows, I stepped outside. I locked the door gently, slipped the key into my pocket, and walked down the empty driveway. The air was cool, still, almost peaceful. No one saw me go. No one asked where I was heading. No one wondered about my absence. And strangely, that quiet disappearance told me more than any argument ever could. I took a small furnished rental on the other side of town, simple, clean, nothing more than what I needed. I didn't tell my children. I didn't leave a note. I didn't make a speech about feeling forgotten. I simply removed myself from the life where I had become invisible. The days passed and I heard nothing. Not a call. Not a text. Not even a question about why I hadn't shown up online or dropped by, as I often did to help with his overwhelming schedule. My silence blended easily into the world he was trying so hard to maintain. But here's the thing about a life that looks perfect. From the outside sometimes it stands only because someone behind the scenes is holding up the beams, steadying the foundation, keeping the whole thing from tilting. As I sat in that small rental, sipping my morning coffee, I felt something shift, something subtle but unmistakable. It wasn't bitterness. It wasn't anger. It was the understanding that my presence had been taken for granted for so long that my absence would inevitably reveal itself, and it didn't take long. First sign came quietly, a message, forwarded to me accidentally, meant for someone else. A small crack in the polished life he tried so hard to maintain. A single thread pulling loose. Something was happening. Something he couldn't control. I leaned back in my chair, the phone still warm in my hand, and let out a slow breath. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel hurt. I felt something closer to clarity, and maybe a touch of inevitability. My leaving wasn't revenge. It was simply time for him to see his life without the man silently holding it together. And soon, very soon, That life he built so confidently would begin to tremble. Then sway, then show him the truth he had long ignored. I didn't leave in anger. People imagine that when an 85-year-old father moves out at midnight, it must be fueled by heartbreak, rage, or some dramatic climax. But the truth was simpler, quieter, almost peaceful. I sat alone in my room after my son canceled my birthday celebration, my 85th one, because his wife wanted to go shopping for a seasonal sale. A sale. As if that outweighed my existence. But I wasn't surprised. Disappointed, yes. But not surprised. For years I'd watched his priorities shift. From family to money. From gratitude to entitlement. From partnership to convenience. I raised him to be strong, independent, capable. But somewhere along the way, independent turned into, I don't need you. And capable turned into, you'll always be there to clean up my mistakes. That night, I realized something crucial. He didn't need me. He expected me. And expectations. They drain a man dry. So I went to the kitchen, warmed up some leftover soup, and enjoyed it slowly, the way people do when they know they're making their last memory in a place. Then I washed my bowl, dried it, and put it back exactly where it belonged. One final act of order in a home that hadn't felt like mine in years. I didn't pack much. Just some clothes, my medications, my photo album, and the old watch my wife gave me 40 years ago. I tied my shoes carefully, my knees ache if I bend too fast, and slipped out the front door. The night air was cool, quiet, almost welcoming. I left the spare key on the counter, folded neatly inside a note with no message, because if I wrote even one word, it would become emotional. And I refused to be emotional about a decision that was long overdue. I took a cab to a small apartment I had quietly arranged 2 months earlier. A place where no one asked me for favors. Where no one raised their voice. Where no one forgot my existence unless they needed something from me. When I entered the apartment, the space felt peaceful. Plain walls, simple furniture, soft lighting, silence, beautiful silence. I made myself tea, sat on the small balcony, and watched the city lights flicker like distant stars. For the first time in years, I breathed without feeling like I was inhaling other people's expectations. My son didn't call. Not the next day, or the next, or even the day after. In fact, he didn't even realize I was gone, but the world around him realized. I was gone. The cracks began slowly. A supplier called with an urgent request, a negotiation I always handled for him. He dismissed it, thinking it could wait. It's COULDN single quotes T. Then came the utilities. Bills he assumed sorted themselves out, because for 40 years, I'd quietly handled them in the background. He thought payments were automatic. They weren't. One of his biggest clients called 3 times in a single afternoon, asking for updates on paperwork I always prepared without ever taking credit. My son didn't even know where I stored the documents. At first, he brushed it all off. He always had an excuse. I'm busy. I'll do it later. My dad probably handled this already. But this time, I wasn't there. And his wife? She was too busy jumping from boutique to boutique, posting pictures of handbags and captioning them with things like #blessedlife and #luxury every day. She didn't notice either, but others did. His assistant called him about missing signatures. His accountant texted twice about overdue forms. His business partner emailed, asking why crucial files were incomplete. My son was smart, very smart, but he built his success on a foundation. He didn't realize I'd been reinforcing all these years, quietly, invisibly, consistently, without me. That foundation began to sink, and still, he didn't notice. Not my empty chair at the dining table. Not my missing teacup. Not the silence in the mornings when I usually hummed old songs while making breakfast. It wasn't until the 5th day, 5 whole days, that his wife finally asked, "Have you seen your dad?" "I haven't heard him walking around." And my son shrugged. "He's probably in his room. Leave him. He likes quiet." That was how they thought of me, a background noise. A steady, reliable machine. Something that functioned without attention. But machines break. Even the strongest ones. Meanwhile, in my little apartment across town, I was having a different kind of week. I woke up early every morning, stretched my stiff legs, and made breakfast exactly how I liked it, without hearing complaints that the house smelled like old food. I visited the park, watched children play, and exchanged nods with other elders enjoying the sun. I read books I never had time for. I repaired an old radio, fixed a loose drawer, and even planted a small herb garden on my balcony. Life wasn't glamorous. It wasn't loud. But it was peaceful. And peace, at 85, is a treasure. Still, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The day my absence reached his reality, his so-called perfect life would start to collapse. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't punishment. It was simply the natural outcome of pulling out a pillar someone pretended wasn't holding up the entire structure. And the cracks? They were only beginning. My son still had no idea what was coming next. By the end of the first week, the cracks were no longer quiet fractures. They were loud, violent, unavoidable. And for the first time in his life, my son was forced to see what I had protected him from his entire adulthood. It started with a single phone call. One missed call. Then another. Then 6 more. All from the same client, one whose relationship I had spent 23 years building with patience, trust, and late-night negotiations. My son ignored the first few calls. He assumed they were routine check-ins. But they weren't. By the time he finally answered, the client was furious. Documents wrong. Deadlines missed. Figures unverified. Approvals unsigned. Everything I used to keep perfectly aligned without him ever knowing. My son tried to calm them. He promised he would review the paperwork. But when he went looking for it, he realized he didn't even know where it was kept. He tore through cabinets, slammed drawers, opened folders with shaking hands while shouting at his wife, "Where did my dad put everything?" He always. "Damn IT, where's the file?" She shrugged, arms crossed, annoyed instead of concerned. "How should I know? Isn't that your job? You're running the company, not him." He stopped, stared at her, a dawning fear in his eyes, because for years he didn't run it. Not fully, not truly. He made the big decisions, yes. But I handled the little things that kept the big things alive. And now the little things were choking him. The dominoes didn't fall slowly. They toppled all at once. First domino, the furious client. They threatened to walk away with a deal worth a quarter of his yearly revenue. Second domino, his accountant, calling repeatedly, urgently, about incorrect tax entries. Entries I used to fix quietly. Third domino, his employees. Complaints piling in, delays everywhere, small crises turning into big ones. Fourth domino, his reputation. Whispers in the business circle. He's sloppy. He's overwhelmed. His operation has fallen apart. People who once praised him were suddenly distancing themselves. Fifth domino, his household. His wife, irritated that he was in a mood, demanded he take her out to another brunch to distress her. When he didn't, she slammed a bedroom door and spent the rest of the night scrolling angrily through shopping apps. Sixth domino, his guilt. For the first time, it started seeping in. Dark, uncomfortable, unavoidable. He began checking my room every night, expecting me to return magically. Like a misplaced item that would eventually turn up. Each time, he found only emptiness. He'd sit at the edge of my untouched bed, hands clenched, whispering to the silence, "Dad, where did you go?" But silence is a brutal teacher. Then came the final blow. A major supplier arrived at his office, unannounced and unamused. A contract renewal was overdue by 3 days. Not because he ignored it, but because he didn't even know it existed. I drafted and handled those renewals for decades. My son panicked. Sweat gathered at his collar. His voice trembled as he stammered through excuses. But excuses don't sign contracts. And they don't rebuild trust. The supplier exchanged one look with his assistant and said, "If your father were here, this wouldn't have happened." A simple sentence. But it shattered him. The collapse wasn't loud. It was quiet. Sudden, complete. By the end of the week, his perfect life was a burning pile of deadlines. Angry calls, financial errors, and a failing home life. He finally called. Envy. Not once, not twice. 31 times. Same man who didn't have a spare minute to attend my 85th birthday now had endless minutes to beg a dial tone to answer. He said in one trembling voicemail, "Dad, please, I need you. Everything's falling apart." I listened to it while watering my small balcony plants. A part of me hurt. Of course it did. He was still my son, but another part of me, a part that had been invisible for decades, finally felt seen. His 31 voicemails turned into 40, then 50, each one more desperate than the last. Some were angry, some were pleading, some were broken, but none of them sounded like the confident man who once told me he didn't have time for my 85th birthday because his wife needed to go shopping. Still, I didn't answer. I let life teach him the lesson. I never had the heart to say aloud, "Love cannot hold up a man who refuses to stand on his own." 3 days passed. On the 4th morning, I heard a knock at the small apartment door I now lived behind. A soft, hesitant knock, the kind a person uses when they're afraid of what's waiting on the other side. Knew it was him, not because of the sound, but because of the silence that followed. A silence filled with guilt, fear, and a son finally realizing what it means to lose a father. I opened the door. He stood there in a wrinkled dress shirt, hair messy, eyes red and swollen. His hands shook at his sides, and for a moment, he didn't even know what to say. He just stared at me, the father he forgot to value, as if seeing me for the first time in years. "Dad," he whispered. The word cracked in half before it even left his lips. I stepped aside and let him in. His shoulders collapsed the moment he crossed the doorway, like he had been holding up a weight too heavy to carry alone. He stood in the middle of my small living room, looking around at the quiet simplicity, the tidy bookshelf, the soft lamp, the kettle still steaming faintly on the counter. He suddenly realized how little I needed, and how much he had taken for granted. He didn't sit. He didn't move. He just started talking, fast, frantic, broken. "Dad, the contracts. I messed them up. The suppliers, they won't renew. The client is gone. My accountant found more problems. My wife keeps spending, and I can't stop her. The team doesn't respect me. Everything is falling apart. Everything." His voice trembled. "I don't know how you handled all this. I thought it was easy. I thought I was doing most of the work." He laughed bitterly, a tired, ashamed sound. "I didn't realize it was you carrying everything all those years." I let him speak. I didn't interrupt. The truth needed to come from him, not from my disappointment. He took a slow breath, and his eyes glistened. "I'm losing the company. I'm losing my home. I'm losing everything you built. And I don't know what to do." He paused. "Please, I need help. I need you." For the first time since he arrived, I spoke. "Why now?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. So I continued. "I wasn't keeping the company alive for you, son. I kept it alive because I believed someday you'd be ready to take it on your own. But the moment things got hard, you didn't look at yourself. You looked for someone to blame." He looked down, ashamed, You pushed me aside for convenience. You forgot I existed unless you needed something. Respect isn't owed. It's earned. And you stopped earning it. Now he looked like a man hit straight in the heart. Because he knew it was true. "Dad," he whispered, barely holding himself together. "I'm sorry. I was proud. And selfish. And stupid." He swallowed hard. "I never meant to hurt you." For a long moment, we said nothing, just two generations standing in the small, quiet room, surrounded by years of unspoken things. Finally, I motioned for him to sit. He sat across from me, shoulders slumped, hands twisted in his lap. "I can help you," I said softly. "But not the way I used to." He looked up, confused. "I won't fix everything for you. I won't save you quietly in the background. If I help, you work. You take responsibility. You learn every detail. Every mistake. Every number. Every consequence." His breath hitched. "And your wife?" I asked gently. He closed his eyes, defeated. "She doesn't want to change," he whispered. "She only wants more. Whatever fills her up for the moment." "Then you have a decision to make," I said. "One that only you can choose." He nodded slowly, pain deepening his features. I could see the truth settling into him, a truth he didn't want, but needed. "I'll make the right one," he murmured. For once, I believed him, and so I stood, walked to the small drawer beside the kitchen, and pulled out a familiar leather folder, the one that held decades of experience. Contacts, strategies, solutions. I placed it on the table in front of him. His eyes widened. Not in entitlement anymore, but in gratitude. "Dad." "Thank you." I shook my head. "Don't thank me yet. You have a mountain ahead of you. And this time, I'm not climbing it for you." He nodded, understanding. For the next hours long, heavy hours, we sat side by side as I walked him through the mistakes. The fixes, the damage control, the rebuilding. His pride fell away. His arrogance melted. His stubbornness softened. What remained was simply a son. Trying, truly trying, to grow. When he finally stood to leave that evening, he hugged me. Not a casual hug. Not a polite one, a long one. A trembling one. The kind of hug filled with all the apologies he didn't know how to say. "I love you, Dad," he whispered. "I always have," I replied. "Even when you forgot." He wiped his eyes, nodded, and walked out into the night, no longer the same man who once dismissed me without a thought. And as the door closed behind him, I felt something shift in my chest. Not victory, not revenge, but peace. Because sometimes the greatest justice is a lesson learned too late to erase the hurt, but just in time to save what still matters.